At a fundraiser this summer, Joe Biden declared that the president's approach to Syria is not enough. Crippling, unprecedented sanctions are not enough, Biden said. We need to escalate in Syria. Now, you've seen this logic before. We saw it in Iraq. That was bipartisan. Joe Biden supported the Iraq war. He doesn't want to talk about it now. When asked about it by a veteran, he used the tragic death of his son from cancer as a shield from the question. Watch.
I'm an Air Force veteran here with some Army veterans. We're just wondering why we should vote for someone who voted for a war and enabled a war to kill thousands of our brothers and sisters. My friends are dead. So is my son. I'm not going after your son. You better remember. I'm not. I'm not going after your son. You were disqualified, sir. Disqualified.
So this moment is bewildering to people who haven't followed the shifts in American politics over the last 30 years. Liberals used to say they were against war, give peace a chance. Remember that? Now, Joe Biden's unquestioning support for wars that don't help this country at all, is one of his chief qualifications as a Democratic nominee. In May, Biden's foreign policy advisor, Tony Blinken, confirmed that a Joe Biden administration would be eager to get the United States into a war in Syria. Blinken described American troops in Syria, that would be Americans risking their lives, as a form of, quote, leverage, right? Blinken vowed that Joe Biden will return to Syria in force if he wins in November.
And to the extent the United States had any remaining leverage in Syria to try to effectuate some more positive outcome, unfortunately, the Trump administration has more or less torn that up too, pulling out entirely. In Syria has taken away significant leverage.
Leverage for what? How does this help us? Nobody ever answers the simplest of all questions, the most profound, the only question that matters. Blinken added that it is, quote, virtually impossible for him to imagine a Biden administration normalizing relations with Assad's government. Again, he didn't even address how sanctioning Syria helps the United States, because that's not the point. It is never the point. Last night, John Kerry made the case in MSNBC that no one loves the troops more than John Kerry does. Of course, the Obama administration may have lied about its plans to withdraw from Afghanistan. It didn't. Of course, the Obama administration turned the nation of Libya into a hellscape of civil war and slavery. But trust me, says John Kerry, I love the troops. Watch.
We have a president who is not protecting our troops, not protecting the interests of the United States of America. These young men and women are extraordinary in today's generation. They serve willingly, they're volunteers, and they deserve certainly the respect of the commander-in-chief, if not every single American.
Oh, okay. So John Kerry respects our troops so much, but he would like to send them to countries you can't find on a map, put them in places where they may die for purposes that have nothing to do with our national security or the advancement of American interests, only to support crumbling post-war international institutions that everyone knows is a joke and are going away. That's John Kerry. He respects our troops. It was just last month that Kerry, who again, unlike Trump, cares about the truth and the troops, took the stage of the Democratic National Convention and longed for the days when hundreds of thousands of our soldiers died in World War II. Watch.
The only thing exceptional about the incoherent Trump foreign policy is that it has made our nation more isolated than ever before. On June 6, 1944, young Americans gave their lives on the beaches of Normandy to liberate the world from tyranny. Out of the ashes of that war, we made peace and rebuilt the world. That was and remains exceptional. It is the opposite of everything Donald Trump stands for.
Oh, that was the Golden Book's version of World War II. Cliche piled upon cliche upon cliche. Mindless. It's propaganda. Democratic voters are starting to believe it. One poll shows that among people who voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016, just 26% now support withdrawing troops from Syria. Pollsters didn't ask why they should stay, but almost no Democrats are for pulling them out. By contrast, nearly 60% oppose pulling out. Trump voters overwhelmingly support withdrawing from Syria. They must hate the troops, wanting them home instead of suffering for years in some remote country that has no connection to the United States. What is going on here exactly? Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis is a senior fellow and military expert for defense priorities, and we are happy to have him on the show tonight. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
How is it that the president, who has done more to withdraw American troops from war zones, is the guy who hates the troops?
Well, you got to look at everything in context, Tucker, and in context from the very beginning, going all the way back to the 2016 campaign. President Trump has been saying he wants no more stupid wars, wants no more regime change wars, and he's been on that. From the very first few months that he was in office, he went about immediately trying to say, why do we need any troops in Afghanistan? Let's get the troops out of Afghanistan. That's been covered in many places here. But you see something that started right then, and it's gone all the way through. He was immediately pushed back by his most senior advisors, by whether it's generals, whether it's civilian people, everyone in establishment Washington, as you said, both Republican and Democrat, pushed back on that. And eventually President Trump said, well, I'm going to defer to the professionals this time. But now then you see that after he sees year after year after year of the same thing, of everyone resisting any attempt to get out of anywhere, even though there's no actual national security threat to the United States that these things are preventing, he's now finally saying, you know what? Forget it. I'm the commander in chief, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to get out we're going to reduce the troops in Germany. We're going to reduce the troops in Iraq, and we're going to reduce the troops in Afghanistan. And I hope those continue on until we get out. But he absolutely is in the right here. His instincts have been proven right. And I, as someone who's fought on the ground twice in both Iraq and Afghanistan, I can tell you he is dead spot on.
So the numbers on the number of senior Pentagon brass who transition seamlessly into the defense industry are pretty shocking. I know some of them, they're good, patriotic people. But there's also corruption, and the system gives the appearance of corruption, that's for sure, and shakes the country's faith in its military leadership. Why is this allowed?
Well, I'll tell you, because it is an institutional morass, I suppose, because every colonel wants to be a general, every one-star general wants to be a two-star general, et cetera. So it absolutely bakes into the calculation that you can't go against the status quo, and that if you want to be a next commander, you have to get a command. So you have to have a war to fight in. You have to have a place to deploy to. That's how you get moved up the chain. And so the system actually predicates that.
Yeah. Well, it definitely is a corrupting influence. I think it's pretty clear. Lieutenant Colonel Dan Davis, appreciate your coming on tonight. Thank you.
Always my pleasure. Thank you.